Okay, I have a confession. I no longer follow the well-trained mind method of homeschooling. In fact, I'm not even really much of a classical homeschooler anymore. At least not as much as I thought I would be when I first started homeschooling. So let me share a little bit about this huge departure and kind of what happened over my homeschool journey. So when I first started thinking about homeschooling, my oldest, well, I actually started thinking about homeschooling before my oldest was even born because I am a homeschool graduate. So I am a second generation homeschooler. I was homeschooled actually only in high school, but I really enjoyed my experience and knew that someday I would want to homeschool my own kids. So I started researching homeschooling, and one of the big books, one of the most popular methods that was really being talked about at that time was the classical model of education and the well-trained mind. The well-trained mind was the resource that a lot of homeschool moms went to. It was their go-to book about homeschooling. So of course I ordered myself a copy and I read through the whole thing. And it was extremely overwhelming, but I loved the premise of the education of following the classical model with all of the great books, following the history cycle, learning in a way that I did not get a chance to learn. It sounded just inspiring and really wonderful. So I wanted that for my kids. So that's how we started homeschooling. I followed a lot of the recommendations in the Well-Trained Mind, and I really tried my best to follow the schedule prescribed in the book and make sure I covered everything. Of course, I ended up being a little bit too married to the style in the book, and it caused a lot of stress in my homeschool where things were just getting overwhelming. With each child that was added to my homeschool, I became even more overwhelmed. So I just kept trying to tweak it a little bit here and there and still just make it work for me. I would read their forums and try to come up with advice and new curriculum that was recommended by the other moms who were following the same method, and I just continued on. But lately, in the past year, I've just made a kind of radical departure from that style of homeschooling. I no longer really follow the well-trained mind recommendations in my homeschool. So why? Well, for one, it is really difficult to follow the amount of work prescribed in the book. I know she had 4 children, so it wasn't just one child, she had several. But I currently have 7, and with all the little ones, and it's just really, really hard to follow all of those things. I also like to have a bit of a break during our day, so I don't want homeschooling to take all day for me and my kids, so it was just a little bit too much. I was overwhelmed when I had multiple kids in multiple grade levels, even though parts of it you're able to do the history cycle together, so there are really great things about it as far as homeschooling a larger family, but I still found it too difficult to follow with all of my kids. Then I also was hit with a struggling learner. I had a child who really struggled to learn how to read, and since this style of homeschooling is all about the wonderful books that you're reading, my child was not able to read most of the books recommended. I was having to do all of the reading. This child could not write very well, and so I was having to scribe everything as far as the narrations, and dictation was just really, really difficult. And so it just became this constant battle with this particular child. It was just too much at the time. So I really had to back off and try some different learning styles, some different methods with this child to really help that child feel more comfortable with learning and to stop hating it, honestly. So I really had to change for that child, and then I found my other children were enjoying the change and they wanted to dive into some of the new things that we were trying. So I slowly started moving away from that. Then, as my kids didn't really fit into certain grade levels, it was kind of hard to keep them all together. I have some children who are kind of gifted in certain areas. I have some children who struggle in certain areas but do really well in others. So it was just really hard to follow the recommendations and try to make everything fit all the different needs of my different learners. So that was really challenging. I also found it difficult to try to do all the planning and use the resources recommended and put together my own schedules, my own reading plan. I just wanted something that was a little more open and go. I wanted something to just tell me, do this this week, and then the next week, do this. And I did want something that even had workbooks. I know that's a terrible word in the homeschooling community, but my kids actually enjoy workbooks. So I wanted some workbooks and I wanted some textbooks. As fun as it was to read all the different resources, I really wanted something that was more of a spine that we could follow, especially for history and science. I did not like pulling my own thing together from all the different resources. That was just too much planning and prep work for me. With the more children I added to my homeschool, I felt like a lot of those subjects got pushed off because I didn't enjoy teaching them because they really overwhelmed me. So I really had to find something else, and textbooks and workbooks and a more traditional approach really seemed to work for my kids, and it saved me a lot of planning time and a lot of planning angst. And I also just found that after following the recommendations for several years, I was getting tired of some of the books and resources. I had used many of them over and over through multiple kids, and new things had been published in the homeschooling marketplace, and I just wanted something new and different. Yes, I wanted the bright, shiny new curriculum to try because I needed something to shake up our routine. I was getting so bored. But the most important reason that I started to really move away from the well-trained mind recommendations was because I wanted a curriculum that focused more on a biblical worldview and that focused more on biblical apologetics. Through our morning basket time, we really started adding a lot of apologetics books, and I really started focusing more on discipling my kids and making that a better priority. Now that they were getting older, we were able to have a little bit more of a morning time. It wasn't pure chaos with the little ones. I used to always read, story Bibles and things with them, but now we could really dive more deeply into the aspects of our faith and what we believe. So I really wanted a curriculum that really helped me do that as well. So it wasn't just part of our morning basket, it kind of really permeated our entire curriculum. So many of the resources in the Well-Trained Mind do work for Christian homeschoolers, and they also work well for secular homeschoolers, but a lot of them are just kind of more neutral, so they don't have the faith-based learning just built in to the resources. And I wanted something that was unapologetically Christian. So I had to start looking outside of the Well-Trained Mind resources and find some other things. Of course, I still use some of the resources that are recommended in the Well-Trained Mind, and I learned so much from all the other homeschooling parents on their forum. My years spent on the forum were really beneficial as I learned about all the new things coming out on the market. I learned a lot about teaching styles and learning styles. So it was a really great place for me to start. I learned so much, and I still incorporate a lot of the Well-Trained Mind methods in our homeschool. We still do narration and dictation, but our homeschool has kind of taken on a life of its own. I found that I was trying too rigidly to follow that method, and now I really had to just branch out and try some different things for my kids, and I really needed some greater flexibility. So I found that I really needed simplicity. I needed something more open and go, and I needed something that was a little more flexible. I didn't always want to follow the history cycle. We ended up doing a couple years of just strictly American history, and that was really fun and exciting. We'll probably do a year just strictly of government, our government, and learning more about civics and the history of our government. And so we're going to break out of that history cycle. We're going to break out of that science cycle and do some of our own things. I just found that I was a little bit too married to their schedule, and it really kind of sucked the joy out of our homeschool. I also want to be able to explore more rabbit trails and just feel like I have a little more time. I want a curriculum that is just a little more pared down and more open and go. I don't want to spend my time planning. I want to spend my time teaching. As much as I enjoyed searching out all the resources when my kids were younger, I'm tired and I want to have some time to myself and not spend all of my spare time researching more homeschool stuff. I want to have some of my own hobbies. That used to be my hobby, and now I actually have other things that I do. So, and then I also really wanted to use textbooks and workbooks. Some of our subjects my kids don't necessarily enjoy. They don't want to read 100 books on that topic. They just want to learn kind of the basics. They're just like, give me the outline, give me the overview, and then we're moving on. So I really had to listen to my kids and follow their lead, and they love workbooks and textbooks. I can't believe it myself, but they really do streamline our homeschool day. I still add in lots of wonderful living books, and so now our style is a lot more eclectic than it probably used to be. So we just decided it was time to move on. It was time to find something different that worked for our family. I wanted something that was very decidedly Christian-based, and so we've moved on to some other resources. So if you follow the well-trained mind, it's still a wonderful method. It works for so many families. I still use parts of it in my homeschool, but I just found that as a whole, I don't really follow the method anymore. It just got to be too much for us in our homeschool. Okay, be sure to like and subscribe below. I try to publish new videos each week where I talk about homeschooling. I give some great homeschool tips, and I love to do curriculum reviews and talk about different homeschool and teaching styles.